Welcome back to the Ascension Playground. This is your friend Ursie. And today I'm a little bit nervous because I'm stepping forward to share a little bit more of myself with you. You know, on the playground, sometimes it's just easier to talk about other things or other people. But today, thanks to my friend Marjorie, who plays with me here on the Ascension Playground, she and I inspired one another to set a date and create a little mini art slideshow for each of our respective artwork. Why? Because it's time now to start sharing. At least this was the impulse that I was feeling. As an artist, you typically go into a gear mode that creates and creates, and there's so much joy in the creation. But then you look around and you go, wow, there's a lot of imagery. How about sharing and starting to talk a little bit about what has been created? You know, it's one thing to say, follow your bliss. Another thing, to ask yourself, well, what lights you up? But this is a different gear shift when you ask yourself, will you start to speak about that which brings you joy with the hope of inspiring someone else? Let's say you're listening and you've created some fabulous work, whether it's jewelry, poetry, pottery. In my case, it's paintings. And so here we go, out of my comfort zone. But I will tell you, it does sometimes take a village. One, I needed someone on the other end to kind of work on a deadline with me. Like, let's just see what that would look like, creating a little mini portfolio of what has been created recently. And then, secondly, I needed another friend like Julia to invite me to start talking about my own work. You see, it's behind me, but I typically, as an artist, create and then step aside. That's the old paradigm. Working with galleries, you bring them your art, you show up at the reception, you wave, you say a few nice things, but then it's over. So today I'm going to stop being mute and allow what wants to come forward. In fact, I checked, and today, in the latter days of November 2022, the beautiful star Alpha Centauri, Beta Centauri Hadar. I get my Alpha and Beta mixed up a little bit. But in the constellation of Centaurus, I'm allowing this unconditional loving wave from Beta Centauri, known as Hadar, to come and join me on the playground now. Okay, so here we go. Sit back and enjoy the little slideshow. Let's see, dun, dun, dun. I never thought until working with my friend Anne Marie that I would even understand how to do a PowerPoint presentation. But thanks, Anne Marie. Thanks, Marjorie. And thank you, Julia. Here we go. So, Art of the Akash, embracing unity and light. This is the anchoring message that I hold within myself. And I've created a little logo above of the 64-point unity grid with a rainbow ring around it, beckoning and calling in the Tibetan rainbow body through this geometry of the 64 points. Okay, so here we begin, and I'm embracing my pinkness. Yes, divine feminine, embracing pink in all her shades. Okay, so here's a picture of yours truly. Yes, allowing the clarity of light coming forward in my fullness of, silver haired crondom. Here we are, embracing unity and light. Now, another beautiful message that came to me recently was through astrologer Pam Gregory when she invited Janet Treelor to join her, and they allowed the channel named Zach to come forward with a specific message. This went into my being and basically let all the light it just all sparkled within me, kind of an activation, right? So here was the message from Zach: the communication between our heart and the cosmos. So the heart and the cosmos is through frequency and sacred geometry. So I don't know why I just started getting so enamored with sacred geometry. I was a figure painter working with emotional energies of relationship and building on the work of the Bay Area figurative painters. But here now in 2022, when Zach shared this idea of communication between the heart and the cosmos, it's this frequency using and incorporating sacred geometry. And if you listen to the nice conversation between Julia and I, when Julia Balaz tuned in to what was that frequency, she found it to be the sacred feminine. It's the divine feminine love activating the masculine sacred geometry. See, it really does take a village to help us move forward in our on our path. So theartoftheakash.com. It was my secret website for quite some time. I would just have it on the side. But it all began in 2012 when so many of us were waiting for this big shift of light to move us from the dark ages into this new portal. Again, as the scientists and astronomers were looking at this photon belt that we were moving in, where Earth has never been before. Our galaxy has not been in this photonic light belt. What was going to happen to us as human beings? Was our beautiful carbon based DNA going to really be activated more towards a diamond level? So there was great anticipation. So for me, as Cryon also says, this is a marker in time, 2012. So what happened to me was allowing myself to say, okay, Akash, what is it? And some people might think, oh, is that the cereal? Kashi, Akash. What is this new word? The Akasha or the Akash has been a long time word coming from Sanskrit. And really, what it means, in my view of it, is this idea of it's held in quantum, a place that moves off the linear timeline of the third and fourth dimension and suddenly becomes all time happening now. It's kind of hard to wrap our minds around this idea of quantum, nonlinear space. But art of the Akash, for me, to allow myself to go into the void, as artists, we go into our zone, but calling it a void or a cosmic womb, for me, that was the galactic center, later to be thought of as the super galactic center, and then a great attractor, and later and most recently, the Shapley attractor. These power points that are coming onto our consciousness through the discussions happening with Julia Balaz on the Quantum Soul Guidance Program. But here it is again, the marker of 2012. Akash, it's already created, already done. You could even say, if it's something happening within your body, already healed. All right. So, this idea of moving between the dimensions or the realms, I, as a painter, said, okay, what happens if I allow myself to go into the zone and say, all right, the paintings are already painted, that which wants to come forward in this now moment. All I have to do as an artist is to give permission, to allow myself to be used as a channel and allow the joy to stream through me and bring things forward into this now time space. I became what I call a mirror. As long as I tuned into joy and allowed whatever wanted to come forward, I was bypassing my mind and my ego, which I love, and it has helped me bring myself to this now moment. But I said, ego, I love you, but sit in the back seat and allow these paintings to come forward that want to kind of anchor light, anchor vibration to help with this grand shift of ages. Okay, so this is the narrative and the game that I've been playing as a human, as a mother, as an artist, and as a seeker. All right. So, when that moment in time happened where the whole globe, our whole world stopped for a moment, and we were experiencing something we hadn't before, the grand pause, the reset, we would call it COVID, let's say. But the silver lining in that was this idea of how are you going to go within and find out what's important, who's important, and how do you want to resonate with this pause button? Well, I was gifted with the ability to have this huge space, a 5,000 square foot rental came available to me during the COVID timeframe. And so I allowed this joy of sacred geometry to work through me in what I call serial moments. So I was creating batches of paintings all at once. Why? Because the space could allow for it. And if you've studied painting, you may know the famous artist Richard Diebenkorn, who was of the Bay Area figure painting school. I remember he and also Matisse, Henri Matisse, would do this idea of serial thematic painting. And when I had the privilege of being interviewed by Peter Seltz, um, the former New York Museum of Modern Art curator and Berkeley director of that museum, he came for an interview and saw my work and said, "Well, Ursula, it looks to me like you're an action painter." And so I didn't really know what he was talking about because I thought I'm an emotional painter. But what he gifted me was this idea of staying in movement as I was creating paintings so that my ego would not just get focused on one. It was more of a batch, like dance with the moment and then shift, dance with this painting and then shift. But there was always a theme. And so I wanted to share these pictures with you of the sacred space that was given to me that allowed me to grow in my eye as a painter by working on sacred geometry on all scales, large, medium, small. That's what happens when you get 5,000 square feet. Here is a painting that was birthed during this time frame, and I'm sharing an image above me. This is a sacred geometry of the 64-point tetrahedron. It's in 2 dimensions. This image kept coming forward in my heart as the guiding geometry that would bring me into what I would call the Aquarian age. So in quantum, we're in the Aquarian age. In 3D on our timeline, we might be in the age of Pegasus still. But when you hold all time together, we're in Pisces, we're in Aquarius, we're in Pegasus, and then we're also in other time zones. So here we go, allowing myself to bring forward the archangelic energy of Gabriel, holding with the heart chakra this idea of a gift for humanity. And you notice the archangel's face is really a toroid of energy. So, embracing this idea of taking away the desire for humans to anthropomorphize energy. That means we like to project our human being form on the angels, where in my artistry, they were really coming out as these glowing energy fields. So I brought in the Taurus for the face of the angel, while again, it is holding and gifting us with the 64-point grid. Now, what is not clear from this picture is I've taken Swarovski crystals and I've placed them in each of the 64 key points. Why? Because when you add crystals to the angels start singing. The angles and the angels carry a vibrational tone. And so, if we play with this narrative, yes, the angles with the angels are singing thank you to the crystals. And the Swarovski crystals carry a specific geometry and star point. So, it's working with the materials of earth through paint and water the beautiful gift of water that's been resonating with crystalline energy as I've prayed over the water, and then bringing in this crystalline form. Boy, I'm really showing you who I am by sharing about the art, aren't I? I'm hoping that I'm gonna go a little faster so I don't delay this too much for your time. But here again, I'm working with the angelic, and this way, this one is more bringing in a feminine quality, you know. So yes, working with that 64-point unity star grid, and then the deep reds, the crimsons, but there's dark that helps enable the light to be lighter. It's this beautiful idea of living in the duality and polarity of the greater the light, the stronger the darkness, right? The greater the light, the stronger the shadow. This is something that artists play with. We know optically that light and dark together make for the most amazing paintings. Then I moved quickly into calling in the spirit guides. So, yes, angelic energies, but now in the case of listening to Cryon talk about the 12 layers of DNA. Suddenly, Cryon was talking about our Pleiadian star mother, Elili-U, and bringing in Mother Mary energy. Again, whatever name you choose to call this beautiful energy that's now here, helping guide us into our ascension, into our transformation into light beings, calling in again this great sacred geometry of the 64-point grid. And these are two separate and different paintings, and there was a whole series done. And some of these are 5 by 5 feet or 6 by 6 feet. I just wanted to go through my inventory of canvases and allow for the bigger range to happen. This one is 48 by 60 inches. And now you can see it's this idea of orbs, the winged angel with almost like a white garment or robe of light to help bring and usher in these beautiful and specific sacred geometries, the orbs. My friend Jimmy, who you've heard on the playground, has basically captured orbs of light in his residence. So he got so excited. And so, inspired by Jimmy's journey, I went and started painting these orbs, bringing in the Taurus, bringing in key geometries to help activate the orbs. Here's a few more. When Jimmy and our friend Robert Brunjas and I would meet weekly, we would call in and activate this divine triad and bringing in beautiful channeling information. But here we see Metatron's cube being added in with the Taurus, and again, the centerpiece being the 64-point unity grid. I kept wondering, why am I so obsessed with this image? And later, I figured it out. But I'm going to go back even further now on that timeline of 2012. Something happened to me. I literally went to sleep. I didn't feel like painting. It was almost like this dormancy of the Ursula before 2012 painting with the figure and emotional abstractions. But then I went to sleep and I thought, what's wrong with me? Part of my awakening and transformation was learning about Abydos, a city in Egypt, and its beautiful temple called the Osirian. And here are pictures of Abydos and the Osirian. You can see that there's water engaging with the Osirian, and there's such ancient mysteries around this particular place and point on earth. This is the temple where, if you look right above my head, the flower of life was inscribed in the stonework, so precise, and not just this one image, but there were other flowers of life. For me, in the research that I've done, is this idea that this point is a creation point. It carries, as Jane 108 says, the 5 and the 6. The 5, the penta, the 6, the hexa. According to Jane, it's a pentahexa. that we find in microbiology as that which is the source codes for our own human creation. But you see this image of the double penta with these circles around it? This is a divine temple blueprint for none other than the Osirian in Abydos. This is the first time I'm sharing this publicly, so thank you for bearing with me. When you are attuning to the synchronicities or the books that show up for you, what came to me first was Robert Lawler from my teacher, Randy Masters, here near where I live in California. Randy was giving a class and we were talking about sacred geometry. And wouldn't you know it, the Osirian is spoken of in Lawler's book called Sacred Geometry, Philosophy, and Practice. Okay, that registered in my head. But during Randy's class, I felt someone touch the back of my heart chakra. I turned around, I said, "Who's touching me?" Like, "What do you want?" And I saw this image reduced down. Again, the double pentagons abutted, but then these two side energies or lines coming down. And Randy explained to me that that was an image gifted to him as well by a channel who said that this is a code for life. So he actually took this image and put it in his garden, and things grew better within that space. That was one of those, take notice. Then one of my favorite authors, Freddie Silva, who I got to hear him speak in Asilomar, near where I live in the Monterey Bay area. He wrote this incredible book called The Divine Blueprint. It came out the same time I was having this awakening. And I fell out of my chair when I saw, look at the book cover. Do you see very lightly the same shape that I was tracking is showing up on his front cover of The Divine Blueprint, looking at these temples, power places, and the global plan to shape the human soul. Fascinating. For me, it's all going back to this Genesis story, the creation. It goes beyond, I believe, this narrative of what we were told about Adam and Eve. There is sacred geometry working with the cosmic mothers. Okay, here you go. Did you know that the flower of life image that I shared with you, we see it in Abydos, when you pull from it the masculine equivalency, we get this 64 tetrahedron grid. Look at it. It's coming right out of the center of the feminine flower and this masculine shape. So I didn't know this. I just followed the tea leaves. I just followed what felt good in my heart. And so I kept asking, what's the image that's going to guide us into this next, age? And this star, this 64-point star, just kept calling to me. If you study the gene keys, you know about the 64 I Ching. You know about the 64 gene keys. 64 is one of those sacred holy numbers. And I'm sure there's more 64s that show up. So this is how I took that shape and just basically inspired myself to come forward. I'm painting this, I think it's 48 by 60 again, painting. And okay, this is what happened. I was in my home garage painting. A neighbor stops by and he goes, "Oh, what are you doing? You're working with that shape, that star? Are you a witch?" And, he's a medical doctor, retired. And I just looked at him going, why would you say witch? Witch, if you mean, am I embracing the feminine mysteries coming forward now? Yes. And the word witch needs to perhaps be redefined as embracing the alchemy of the balance between the masculine and the feminine. He hasn't been back to my garage since, but I just got to tell you, I had to get over the hump of being called out as, "What are you doing?" Because this 5-pointed star was always associated with witches. However, when you look at it from a neutral position, this beautiful star within the pentagon, it's fractal. You just keep it's a way of seeing how the smallest piece includes the whole. You can keep bringing this image of the stars, the five-pointed star, through the penta, feminine, but working with the exterior form of the hexagon. Do you see how the 5 and the 6 are working in this image? So, And then I evolved and brought forward with the shift of ages. The image of the butterfly has been one of those archetypal images. It's the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. So right in the center of the double pentas, I place this light, this radiant light, and the blue shapes that are coming like almost diamonds. I look at that as one of the Merkabahs, the light craft that we move interdimensionally with. This includes acrylic and oil and gold lines. Again, I've added later Swarovski crystals to each of the key angles so the angels will sing with this painting. Okay, that's a lot. Boy, so many layers. There's a few more pieces. Again, listening to Cryon, bringing that message of the angels, Cryon as engaged with the Arcturian light energy, the angels that kiss us at the moment of birth, Genesis, and the angels that welcome us back to the light when we pass into the next realm when we die. So this particular painting, now I think I'm working with the ratio. I'm trying to always bring in the harmony of working with that divine proportion. So here we see the flower of life, the angels, the sacred circle on top of that divine blueprint from the Osirian temple. And then as a child, I let myself do some beautiful rainbows now, incorporating the Tibetan double rainbow body. It's now. And allowing the drawing painting to happen, infusing gold into the work. Yeah. And you can see right in the center is still that 64-point unity grid, this time being layered on top of another 64-point unity grid. Julia once asked me, what do I think about the geometries going forward? And I believe when we start tuning into these other star families that are already in other dimensions, working with our ascension, that we're going to experience them in a layered kind of geometry, in that spherical quantum nature. And so I'm challenging myself to think about the sphere, working with Genesis of creation. And my hope is by meditating or looking at some of these images, even just a picture, a JPEG, that our bodies at a cellular level will remember how to align and attune to advance healing, wholeness within us. Okay, coming to a close now. So here we see the rainbow body. I'm reducing the form now to really the 64-point unity grid with this gorgeous orb-like sphere, and then the rainbow, layering the geometry. So if you've made it this far, I just want to say thank you, thank you. Here's a funny picture of me just trying to go, here I am, but this permission to just be raw, natural, being myself. This is who I am. If you want to see some more images, feel free to visit artoftheakash.com. I want to thank you again for being with me and see you next time on the Ascension Playground. Bye for now.